All right, we want to turn our attention to North Korea as well. In a recent interview, White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon claimed this, quote, "There's no military solution to curbing the country's nuclear ambitions." But then yesterday, Secretary Tillerson rejected that notion. Listen.
I don't really have a comment on what Mr. Bannon's remarks were. We have been quite clear as to what the policy and the posture towards North Korea is. We are prepared. We're prepared militarily. We're prepared with our allies to respond if that is necessary. That is not our preferred pathway. It is only prudent that they fully understand the consequences should they make a bad choice.
And meanwhile, North Korea's new propaganda posters are boasting that the U.S. is within strike range of its missiles. Joining us right now, Eurasia Group Asia Director Meredith Scepter. Meredith, thanks very much for joining the conversation. Your thoughts on the latest tensions here?
Absolutely. I think you need to be watching what the President's defense chiefs as well as the Secretary of State are saying. All military options are always on the table, but they're stressing that it is the defensive nature of the military option that they're considering here. The Trump administration is going to focus on the diplomatic pressure strategy to force Pyongyang back to the negotiating table, and that's what we expect over the next 6 to 12 months.
So, Meredith, it's baffling to me how an advisor to the president could undercut the president by basically saying one of his key leverage points is off the table, and yet I suppose it raises a question. I mean, is Steve Bannon onto something here? I mean, is it the case that really there are very few legitimate military options to deal with North Korea, given the proximity to Seoul, given the proximity to other allies in the region?
Absolutely. The barriers to the military option are very high. And I should note that Steve Bannon was speaking off the cuff to the reporter, and it wasn't an official interview. So again, the administration is going to focus on the diplomatic strategy to force North Korea back to the negotiating table and to build leverage over North Korea through application of sanctions and other means of applying economic pressure. And the game here is to get as much leverage over Pyongyang as possible so that when you do sit down at the table, you have the ability to force an endgame that is in the U.S. interest.
Meredith, between the sanctions that were just passed at the UN and North Korea very publicly kind of backing off its threat to Guam, would you say that Trump's policy on North Korea has been a success so far?
Look, it's going to take some time for that policy to play out. And certainly the challenge here is that the application of economic sanctions over the course of the last couple of decades have not deterred Pyongyang from its ultimate goal of obtaining an ICBM that could have the ability to strike the United States with a nuclear-tipped warhead. So Pyongyang has shown no indication that it is interested at all at negotiating away the one thing that it believes protects its regime from being overthrown. And from our side, from the U.S. side and that of our allies in the region, the military option is indeed horrific and something that the military chiefs want to only consider as an ultimate last resort and as a defensive measure. So really, when we look at the long game here, we are beginning to see the strategy evolve towards a potential for a deterrence and containment strategy. Now, this is not something that the White House is talking about, but it's something that the policy experts and the think tanks in the field are beginning to discuss, realizing that there are no good options on the table and that the military option is really not one that any of the parties want to deploy.
All right, we will leave it there. Meredith, thanks very much for your insights.
Thank you for having me.
We will see you soon. Meredith Scepter there.